Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, the SANS ICS Summit 2019 and What to Expect. My name is Carol Auth of the SANS Institute. Today's featured speakers are Robert M. Lee, SANS Certified Instructor and Author, and he will be moderating today's webcast. Tim Conway, Technical Director, ICS and SCADA Programs at SANS, and Michael Assante, ICS Director. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenter, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. With that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Robert.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate everybody dialing in today. And really the purpose of this webcast is not just to talk about the 2019 summit, but to be kind of a video that can be used in the future for anybody that's interested in the ICS summit in general, sort of for the years to come. The ICS summit holds a pretty unique place in our community. And what I'll do throughout the webcast with Tim and Mike is talk about where it's been, where it's going, kind of what we want to get out of it, and to also help you as an audience member to understand if this is a summit that's worth your time and effort. I know that all of us lead incredibly busy lives. If you are in ICS security, it is high probability that you are in high demand and that your time is in high demand. So to break away for a conference, especially one that can be 2 days long plus travel and then maybe even training around that, which is another 5 or 6 days, it can be a significant investment for organizations and for people. So is it the right investment for you or not? And what can you learn from the summit? So today with me, I have Tim Conway as well. And then of course, Mike Assante is trying to dial in. So for those of you that know Mike, he's been just taking his time off. He's just, been slacking and completely not being available to folks. No, he's been going through some medical things. And so I thought he wasn't going to be on today at all, but like a true person that really, really loves this conference, he's like trying to call in from the hospital. So we'll see if he joins us today. But the biggest takeaway of the webcast is Mike continues to be an awesome person. All right, so let's talk about the ICS Summit at a glance, which is really where did this whole thing get started and what should you expect of it? And then we'll dive into some of our favorite presentations, some of the favorite content that we've seen, what you can expect in 2019 and what you can expect going forward. And hopefully for those of you that are especially new maybe to the entirety of the ICS community, we'll give you a little bit of background, the other conferences and things that happen around the community as well, and what really makes a good sort of path for you in taking advantage of all the opportunities out there. So when did all this begin? Well, back in 2005, SANS ICS Summit ended up being one of the first ICS security conferences. So a baby-faced Mike Assante up in there in the corner, and the SANS Institute founder, Alan Pollard, down there in the bottom right, decided to build this conference. And, SANS has long been seen as the preeminent IT security trainer, and they've hosted classes and conferences for decades. But what I thought was really interesting is Alan Pollard is actually a professional engineer. So he started his career out on the engineering side of the house. And obviously he went on to do some amazing and wonderful things with SANS, but I like to take credit for the fact that he's PE and that there was always an ICS blood, if you will, at SANS. So if you look back and think back to the early 2000s, PDD 63 came out in 1998. So that was the presidential directive, and that was under President Clinton. And it was the first time publicly there was a White House level push to say our infrastructure is vulnerable to cyber attacks. And as you can imagine, in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s especially, just about everything cybersecurity related, especially if you're talking about attacks and critical infrastructure, ended up being massively classified and sort of overclassified to a point. But there was a lot of people in the know working not only at utilities and energy and manufacturing companies, but a lot of that happening on the government side of the house. So you had the early days of some of the cybersecurity work in the NSA and what would predate Cyber Command happening over like the Fort Meade area. You had Idaho National Labs and Pacific Northwest National Labs, Oak Ridge National Labs, and the DOE labs really spinning up around ICS security early on and trying to make sure that they were protecting that. But it was this whole of community type effort right from the beginning. And that's, I think, an important theme early on, is that there was this US-like community, but obviously there's way more out there and going on, and cybersecurity groups and research being done all around the world. And the idea was, how do we actually get this out of these compartmentalized, classified type discussions and have real discussions around the security of our infrastructure, and not just regulation and compliance, but making sure that we're actually doing security. So that was Mike and Alan's brainchild. Happened in 2005. I think the first ICS conference was actually what we affectionately call WeissCon, after Joe Weiss. It was the ICS Cybersecurity Conference, which still runs to this day. So it was the ICS Cybersecurity Conference, then it was the SANS ICS Security Summit, then there was S4, and to this day, those three end up making up kind of your three big ICS generalist conferences. So not industry specific, like a GridSecCon for electric or an API for oil and gas, but for your main stage kind of general ICS security conferences, those are your three big ones. There's also the ICS Joint Working Group, ICS JWG, that happens through the Department of Homeland Security as well, twice a year. And that was actually a free conference. So there's kind of these three big ones. Fourth, if you want to consider the DHS as one, which ends up being really valuable. And now we've even seen some great things happen in other conferences in Europe. There's a good one, the CS3 Stockholm. There's a good conference in Kuwait as well, the Kuwait Industrial Automation Control Conference. So we're starting to see a lot more now. But back in 2005, there was one of two places that you'd go to really talk about this as a collective. I'll stop for a quick second for you, Tim, and also to see if Mike was able to jump in already, that he might want to be able to share some thoughts.
Mike should be calling in right now.
Awesome. Look at that.
Right.
Clear timing.
He's here. All right, now we can all shut
Mike,
up.
Mike, I basically said a bunch of crappy things about you while you were gone. So if you want to pretend that you're actually a good person, you can feel free to restore your merit here.
That's wonderful. No, great history summary there, and big hello to the ICS community and everybody. It's March, springtime is my favorite time of the year as we close in on exactly what we're here to talk about, which is the ICS Summit. It's an exciting time. It's something that we kind of pull together people from across the entire landscape. We look at everything from what are asset owners able to do, what type of best practices are getting improved, what type of threats are happening, really kind of focus on the skills you need to know and the information about, what's out there in the realm of the possible. So it's my favorite time of the year, and I know the team's worked really hard this year to put together an incredible program, and we're going to have fun with it. We're going to be able to get together as a community, and we have been working really hard on the engineering side to build some really fun challenges for some of the after nights, and we have just a really exciting kind of platform. I hope working hard so I could be there. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to be there because of my situation right now medically, but that's one of the big prayers I have, is that I can get out there and be with you guys this year. And if not, the team, this is one of the best teams in the world here who do actual practical work. They're out there all the time doing engineering. They're out there solving people's problems. They're seeing lots of things. So this is probably from past years, I would say we always had a great ICS team, but it's just fantastic now. So really excited. So I'll turn it back over to you, Tim.
Thank you, sir. Rob, I think we're good with the slide. Mike, did you have one question that I don't know the actual answer to, and I was wondering. So back in your role at the time, I know you've always been in close communications with Alan throughout your career, but what was kind of the impetus for Alan to say we need to get in this game and start looking at summits for industrial control system and cybersecurity? What was the launch point for this?
Yeah, if you go back, I've been working in industry at American Electric Power with the power industry, and we had been exploring with the Idaho National Laboratory research and demonstrations that they've been doing, the real risks to control systems that are related specifically to electric power back then in those days. What was very clear was, after working the problem for about a year and trying to dissect the different elements from SCADA-wide control and monitoring down to protection and control within substation environments, that there really wasn't a strong understanding of how to apply cybersecurity practices across a large spectrum, and that engineers were not getting the type of, if you will, traction with IT security teams. And so I actually went to Alan very early and said, hey, we've tried to tackle this in different quarters to include working directly with engineers, but we really think there needs to be a bridging function where IT security professionals at that time, which were more focused on enterprise systems, were able to get educated on control systems and then bring their practices and concepts into those environments, while engineers would be educated on IT security practices. So it was really a bridge building exercise, and he didn't even, it was a 15-minute conversation of let's do it and let's pick a date. And within a couple of months, we were organizing the very first summit in order to be able to start bringing down, if you will, the walls between the communities. And he just made a very early commitment to that, knowing that that was the right thing to do. And it's turned several years later into the ICS curriculum. We're actually teaching courses and those types of things. We partnered back early with Chess and other folks that were just starting programs. We were trying to promote all the information that was becoming available from Australia to the United States out into the community. And he really just, it was kind of a mission-focused heart thing, knowing it was the right thing to do. And so that's how it all started.
Oh, fantastic. Well, with that, I'd like to turn it right back over to you, Mike, on who the summit's for. I know for me, it was an interesting thing getting involved. I had sort of lived in my little bubble that was the U.S. intelligence community. I had not been really involved in the ICS community per se. It was always the, labs and federal government and kind of what we were doing behind the closed doors, as it were. And I remember coming out to the summit. I actually give a lot of credit to, of course, not only you, which is obvious, but the summit for kind of my launching point of, I should really do more in the larger discussion around these threats. So I think the cyber threats piece of it was particularly sensitive at the time. And it was me coming to the summit from a government role and realizing just how much was going on. And I think, I see this a lot for government folks as well, of any of our different governments, not just the US, but it's common to be in these environments where things are either classified or sensitive off, where you don't realize how much is already happening in the private sector. You look around and go, why is this even classified? Like they're like 5 years ahead of this in the private sector. This isn't sensitive. This is best practice. And it was so thrilling for me from that at the time government ICS security role popping out, going, okay, this is exciting content around lessons learned and best practices. I think practitioners sharing. So for me, it had a flavoring, but for you and what you always intend out of the summit and really who it's for, I know it's a wide audience, thus the mirror on the screen here, but what's like your core, who the summit's for?
That's a great question, because really who the summit is it, and you hit it spot on. It's really focused on, if you will, and I call the a community come together. I really think it's for the community, but within the community, it's really focused on the ability to get out there and deploy the best architectures, make the best decisions, have the best teams from a skill perspective to be able to deal with what we think is going to happen. So it really is for multiple parties. I put the focus more on, if you will, getting out there and asset owners being able to understand the environment they're in and be able to apply what they're learning at the summit, apply things from the classroom as well. But certainly it also covers everything from the researchers to the vendors that are supporting them to the supply chain and the ecosystem. And really it's an opportunity, if you will, to get together and talk about where are we stumbling, where do we need to be better. It's really pushing these thoughts, and I've seen over the years many summits have turned around where suppliers have come away and said, you know what, we're going to do this differently. We're going to attempt to try to do this based on what we heard. That makes a lot of sense. We've had asset owners come together and be able to say, hey, I need to go figure out how to do a little threat hunting, for example. And Rob, I wouldn't minimize the contribution of. I understand what you say about the classified world and the real world, but the reality is people like you have developed practices to be able to go out into these environments and actually look for problems and identify choke points and improve your ability to monitor these environments. All those things have grown up over the last few years and has made major contributions in being able to ready organizations to deal with potential attacks. And so I think the summit really serves the entire community, but the big focus is on learning and how to take that learning and apply it in order to increase our collective security out there.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that's fair. And my intention definitely wasn't to downplay the government piece of it. I think, if anything, the government side of it has still been a major focus because they're the ones that get to deal or historically have been the ones that dealt with a lot of the threat component of the discussion. I think a lot of the here's what's going on day to day inside the operations of these environments was private industry. Then up for a point, it was here's what's going on with the threats, kind of government, and now we're seeing this beautiful mix of the two. But yeah, definitely not to downplay, but to note that it's very difficult whenever you're in one community to not get lost in a little bit of groupthink. And I've always I've always been proud of the ICS Summit for bringing everybody together and making them sort of step outside of their bubble and realize just how amazing the larger community is. So yeah, Tim, do you have any thoughts on that and on the who it's for? I mean, you were from an asset owner background,
Yep,
so you had a completely
for sure.
different.
Yeah, so with a number of years with SANS now, but prior to that, probably 9-10 years coming as an attendee and as a speaker. And really, when we, from an asset owner perspective, we can go to users groups and we can go to vendor conferences and hear from the people that are selling the stuff exclusively, which is an opportunity that we have to take and participate in. But coming to the, at the time, the SCADA Summit and over time, the ICS Summit gave us an opportunity to hear kind of challenges from other sectors beyond the one that kind of we were operating in and seeing every day, seeing kind of where we were in the overall maturity of things, hearing from researchers, hearing from a variety of different threats from government and other people, and more importantly, focusing on what do we do about it. So that's the one piece that we really tried to take out of the SANS events, regardless of what the SANS event is kind of Alan's promise from day one is that you'll be able to go back to work on Monday and do something about what you've learned here. And it's that question that Alan's always asking everybody is, are we making a difference and how? And these summits for sure, from the people on the stage to the vendors to the at-night activities, interaction with peers, we've heard from many attendees, and I was one of those, that these summits actually for sure make a difference for people coming and going. They were a must-attend event for us every year, kind of like going to a doctor checkup, something that you absolutely have to go, look, assess yourself, learn new things, learn about some new approaches, and go back and implement them.
Man, you're making this sound exciting, Tim. It's annual checkup. Thanks for that. No. All right, so let's just pivot into what to expect, and then right after the what to expect slide, I'll just get us into it immediately. This is, to me, the most fun part of the presentation, where we went back and we picked out some of the presentations over the years, and look at some of the themes that resonated over the last 14 years, and sort of what it says about where we're going as a community. So what to expect for you all, and then choosing to come to the ICS Summit. Look, it's the place where the community exists, and I think not necessarily the official SANS position, but I've always viewed the way that we have conferences in the ICS community today as feeling their own sort of niche. When I look at ICS JGBG, I view it as you're ICS curious. You're not putting any resources too much. ICS JGBG comes around to different cities throughout the year. You come in, you learn kind of, okay, what does these terms stand for? I'm really interested in this. What are some things going on? Cool. Then you want to learn about ICS. You want to become a professional in this space. You want to actually dive in and be a practitioner. And to me, that's where SANS ICS really excels, where it's not only what is the actual route to getting involved, and here's training and everything around developing those skills. And like Tim said, sort of what can you leave and go use day one after the conference. But it is, to me, the biggest community conference where it's here's the asset owners and operators, here's what's going on at various government organizations and labs, here's what's going on and the latest and greatest of the people that are working the mission. It is very practitioner community focused with a heavy focus on asset owners and operators, the people that run our infrastructure. Then there's like the S4 part of the world, which is very research driven. Dale does a fantastic job of really understanding kind of what's the next like exploit mechanism, what's the next like big topic that we got to focus on, what's the leading edge kind of research. It's theoretical at that point, some of it's applied, but like what really digging into some of the nuances of where we might go in research. And then like the ICS Cybersecurity Conference to me ends up being kind of a different element of the community of folks that maybe not maybe are really looking into some like the vendor community as well and like what's going on. A lot of talks for the vendors, they can get an opportunity to get on stage and talk about like what are they researching, what are they doing. There's obviously still community, but it's a different element of the community which ends up being useful. So when I say to folks what to expect about SANS ICS, like you got to come ready to love the community. Like this isn't one of those conferences you can go to, in my opinion, sit alone by yourself and just go, oh, okay, that was some cool talks. Like you're going to be getting involved. We've got everything from not only getting the asset owners and operators, but a lot of activities at night. We usually have one night where it's just going out, whether we could just go to rent out a bar at first, or more commonly we'll do things like I think last year, the year before that, we were playing laser tag and shooting up aliens in 3D environments and stuff for no reason. But we're doing like bringing the community together type activities at night. And then to where we will talk about where we're doing a lot of like actual educational based activities and like some of the cool ICS Netwars stuff to get engaged coming up. But let's again go ahead and jump in right into some of these presentations. So I think, you know, these were some of the ones I pulled out from 2005, 2009 timeframe. And what I loved about these is a lot of the topics are still relevant to this day, right? So we have everything from Mr. Mike Assante himself when he was over at NERC, talking about the cybersecurity standards drafting team. So what are we really going to be doing for the cybersecurity standards across the bulk electric system? Some presentations around the actual asset owners themselves. We have, well, I think that's Shell's slides, if not Shell, maybe BP, and then Eastman Chemical. Yeah, we got Shell over there on the right, looking at implementing things from an asset owner aspect. So on the Shell one as an example, here's intrusion detection technologies within process control networks, and that's 2008. So we see a lot of focus these days on like monitoring your industrial environment, but that stands, you know, a decade ago we were talking about that and the need for it. And a lot of what has come into the community now and the types of technologies and the type of things that are occurring are entirely based off of these types of presentations. Sometimes it gets really down the weeds. We got Matt Carpenter here talking about microscopic probes, which are a fun or not topic depending on your status in life. We got the Bandolier project when Dale Peterson came and talked about that back in 2009. So a lot of cool topics from that time period. So to you know, Mike, can you remember anything from 2005, 2009 timeframe? We're going to go forward and do a couple others. 2005, 2009 timeframe that really stuck out to you. Kind of putting you on the spot there because we haven't rehearsed this, but anything from that time period that really got you excited about the early days?
Well, yeah, I did. I mean, the idea of kind of pointing out what was happening and what to expect, and more importantly, some of the demonstrations of you know, how our control systems compromised. I mean, really being able to put equipment up on stage, have people understand what's happening and why it's happening, and then why is that an issue, how to go back home and look for that. Those types of things started to really kind of, if you will, create the mental picture or the larger landscape of what the issues would be. And it really started to, if you will, percolate the idea of who needs to be learning what and how. And so I think that was one of the biggest, in the 2005 to 2009 timeframe, was still formulating a plan of attack, if you will, and giving people a good mental model to work against. And, you know, since then, obviously, there are lots of models that exist, and those models honestly are changing under our feet right now. So as we kind of go contemporary now into this year's summit, there's a lot of questions about, Purdue model's a functional model, but the architectures don't look that way so much anymore. What do we do to keep up with those things? Where are the gotchas? How do we take some of the skills that we do have and capabilities and apply that to these new architectures? Pretty exciting stuff. It is a dynamic time. I think I look at what's happening in the control system and safety space, and there's some exciting things, there's some scary things, and that's what I think from the old days of 2005 and 9, where you started to build the first model that would help you understand the risk and what you need to do. We're now in a place of trying to catch up with where technology is driving us and build some new models, which is always exciting.
Absolutely. Tim, anything from you?
Mainly, I would say, this time frame, especially as the electric sector was marching down the path of drafting teams and our regulation and things that were happening elsewhere in the world, this was the place we went for up-to-date information as much as we could, and we looked to other sectors like these presentations that you grabbed from Shell, for example, to see what they were doing in their sector and how we could apply it within our own. Certainly, this is where we became aware of some of these capabilities from Dale and from Digital Bond, and just how we apply them within our segments and how we comply with the regulations. And this was the source of truth. This is where we went to kind of look, see how we built our plans for the coming year. This time, there was one piece that we didn't capture here, and I don't know that there's actually photo evidence of it. But also along this time, some of the at-night talks is when we started seeing the exposure to closure activity, which was kind of a whole series of electric sector run, but every sector could learn from, with Ben Miller and the people at NERC and Tim Roxy and Mike kind of driving a staged play indicating, how an entity was compromised, how they discovered it, what they did with that information, how they shared it, responded, and eventually tried to recover and restore. Those things today, if we could have captured those videos, they would still be wonderful training videos for people to learn from as events happen around the world. But that time frame, that's kind of what stays in my mind.
Yeah, I remember getting roped into an exposure to closure with those guys long before Ben ever joined my team, and not having any idea. I think it was my first ICS Summit. They're like, "Hey, Rob, I need you to get up on stage." I'm like, "What? For what?" Like, "Here, just put this on. You're gonna be in a play." I'm like, "Oh, what?" Yeah, it was. It would have been more convincing if I had been pitched a tabletop exercise and not a theatrical production. But it was so much fun. And so yeah, look. I think that leads into this next topic of some of those names we've seen time and time again, and some of the things that happen in our community. I remember here on the slides we have like when Idaho National Labs always. I know has been such a huge supporter over the years, and coming and briefing, like here they're briefing the Sophia technology, which is really one of the first, if not the first, like ICS IDS systems built. We have Samara before she was over it. I think Exelon, and now, back when she was over at DOE, talking about maturity models and how to actually move the topic forward, like Mike was talking about. I love that the FBI came and briefed back in 2000, and I think it was 11 is this time frame, if not 2010. And it was Robert Mueller that they were putting on the slide about the FBI director. And I was like, man, I want to throw back there. And and then we even started seeing like Liam Amursha come, Amursha, oh my God, Liam's going to murder me. Marushu, there we go, coming and talking about Stuxnet that had just happened. I think that was a big turning moment. You can't get through an ICS presentation without dropping the S word. But Stuxnet was, of course, a big moment where a lot of people learned that SCADA was a thing. And what I liked is that the ICS Summit had already been there for 5 years before then to educate people and have a compendium of knowledge. But again, this theme of always a strong sense of community, it struck me, even when building this presentation, at how many of the names like Brad and Polay and Mark Hurd and these folks and Assante and the one down there about the building a detection capability, that's the Ben Miller slide. Like these folks that have been in this community in Samara for a long time, and it was kind of a nostalgic trip for me that the same people we see now leading programs and doing amazing work were junior in their career speaking at SANS ICS Summit, and then now we have them coming back later in the career. So I think on that topic of that strong sense of community, one of the things I'll extract out and then kick over to you, Mike, is I've always been impressed and amazed at, while we have a strong sense of community, what that community allows is individuals to be game changers, where it's not this idea that, oh, I don't have a lot of time and I don't have a lot of focus. Oh, my company's not necessarily supporting me. Like, this is a field where individuals can make massive change, but it's off the back of a very supportive community and the people that don't take the stage and are doing a lot of work behind the scenes, that we can really sort of do this together. So, what's your thoughts on that with SANS ICS Summit, and also just ushering in a lot of these voices into our community?
Well, certainly, I think, you hit the nail on the head as it relates to the ability of speakers to get up there and be supported by the community, and doing, in most of the best talks, you had folks like, for example, coming from a gas extraction company who turned around their security program, and it was, they relied on the community and the ecosystem to help them do it, and shared how they did it. And those types of takeaways, and this idea that, hey, I can go do at least these things, or here's a path to get to a better place. Those things were fantastic. And it's always been a collection of the community, I think, that has supported people to do things. Lots of individuals out there have opportunity. And what's great about this community, to your point, is people will really, really try to help you based on the role that they're in. The speakers that we like to focus on is everything from incident responders. And, Rob, you've got a lot of folks who are very experienced in that now, who've learned a lot of things, and those things to transfer into security programs is super important, so we can collectively learn. We've always been focused on that. When we went to the Ukraine and looked at those incidents, it was really important. We came back and shared, why do they happen? How do they happen? What can you do about it? What type of practices could you put in place to deal with everything from the technical things to the operating side of the system to be able to be more resilient? Those types of sharing, I think, is really has come to be the focus on where the value comes from the program itself. So I really, and I love having researchers come and talk about their research. Some of our instructors, obviously, getting up there and sharing their insights from the work that they do in the field, and of course the ICS suppliers, and challenging them. Right? One of the big things is we make these observations of what's happening, and we challenge the community in various ways about, hey, what technology you're deploying, how we're deploying it, and how do we do it better? And so there is a little bit of tension up there sometimes when we challenge some of the members of the community to stretch a little further. And I think that's an important part of it as well. So it's an opportunity not only to share, but also an opportunity to keep pushing forward. And so that's, I think, what makes it really unique and powerful, is that we focus on pushing the entire, if you will, landscape forward.
Perfect. And Tim, I'll bring you on this one. So the last slide the last two, and some of the highlights of the presentation in the 2012 2015 timeframe, I love seeing some of the people that are now teaching at SANS and whatnot. So I remember, I don't know if it was my first SANS ICS presentation, but it may have been, that I actually got up on stage. It was the So Easy a Child Could Do It one, where I used little Bobby to talk about ICS. I think it was just more of a fun presentation. But what really I loved is we got a Chris Sistrunk one here from back when he was at Entergy, before the mandate days. We got Jason Christopher when he was over at FERC, who's now one of our 456 instructors. We had Jake Brodsky and Bob talking about Project Shine. We got some pictures up here of Jonathan Polay, who is always doing amazing work back at Red Tiger Security. But this was actually a Graham Speak presentation where he was just invoking Polay on slides. And then Bachman, oh man, we had Andy Bachman back when he was doing his little consultancy. Instead of the amazing work, I mean, it was good work then too, don't get me wrong, but instead of the amazing work that he's now been able to do over at Idaho National Labs. So this slide to me around pushing forward, it was, and this is something that I think for all of our attendees is something that's just, again, magical about the SANS ICS community, is you can participate in the community by coming and speaking. You can participate in the community by coming and learning. You can watch the videos that get posted online. If you can't make it to the summit, we post all the content out there. But there's an element of the groups that come and speak and end up becoming our instructors and end up really furthering the SANS mission about educating everybody about ICS security. And it's just been a fun thing. And so, Tim, I'll kick this one over to you, because you, like you said, had come for years as an asset owner operator. And then Mike twisted your arm to getting involved, and that's been an amazing thing for you, I think, in furthering your own your own development, like it has mine. So walk me through that path of you're a community member and then sort of pushing forward and actually joining the SANS team. What's that like for all of our folks?
Sure. It's all I blame it all on Mike. It's definitely nothing that I ever envisioned doing personally from a career perspective. I'm perfectly fine being in the audience listening to really smart people, but Mike and Alan and all kinds of people at SANS are really, really good at kind of finding people and moving them to places that they feel that you'll do really, really well and continue to challenge and push you. I think I've really enjoyed the experience, but when I tell other people, I know there's a lot of people in our audience that could easily be up on stage talking about great projects and great things that they're working on and things that they've achieved that a lot of other folks that are next to them could learn from. And it's kind of the comment you made earlier, Rob. I agree with it 100%. When I talk in class, I talk about when you have a kid graduating from high school, you give them the Dr. Seuss, "Oh, the Places You'll Go" book. And in ICS, I think that's true for any of us, that there is so much work to be done, and everybody is kind of an expert in an area that could pursue kind of highlighting what they've done, how they make it work, how they've overcome some challenges and what they learned from it. And there's probably, I don't know, a few hundred people sitting around them that could learn from everything that they've done. It's just a matter of pushing yourself, going out and pursuing. I think if you've always attended the summit and you haven't presented yet, then we're missing something, because we're surrounded by really, really intelligent people that should absolutely be talking about the programs up on stage and products that they've built.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into the last slide on this, of the sort of trip down memory lane, if you will, which is moving from passive to active. And we've seen this in our community where, Mike and I, and this is up on the screen as well, wrote the ICS cyber kill chain and talked about taking an active defense. How do you move past architecting good networks and trying to build security in, and of course using passive defenses like tools and technologies, but how do we really train the human and empower the human to get involved and move it to an active defense? Because if you're talking about reducing general risk, passive and architecture challenges are absolutely a great place to start. If you're talking about reducing risk as it relates to adversaries, the only way to counter empowered and human adversaries is to have empowered and well-trained and enabled human defenders. And this has been a great theme over the past couple of years. I'm sort of rounding out the era, if you will, where everyone from Matt Llewellyn and Side Body Works getting up on stage to talk about how he's training kids in high school, to the well-titled Stuff Happens presentation by Trinity River Authority coming and talking about what they're doing. MISO getting up on stage talking about active defense and what they were doing in their maturity program. We had some Mantech coming and talking about Dragonfly. We had Dragos come and talking about Trisis. We're starting to see more and more threats, not just security challenges and compliance, but real active threats requiring real active defense. And it's been amazing to see the past couple of years, the people that have come through and talked about these, as well as the companies like MISO here in Trinity River, taking it and turning it into programs and actually coming and speaking about it again. So Mike, any thoughts on that?
Just to say that I think my job, I've always asked the team, which includes, by the way, we put together advisory committees and reach out to individuals in the community and also use our forum. And I really ask, how do we provide the most rich experience that brings together resources, right? Not only networking and knowledge, it parts a big picture, provides specific how-to steps in some cases to see how to achieve better ICS security. Do we have holes? When we have holes, we try to fill it, like the paper on the kill chain, to understand how systems can be compromised and what you can do exactly, as you suggested, Rob. So, and that's the exciting part of it, is this rich experience. And I think we put a lot of time into thinking about what goes into the program, what gets shared, and it just, it makes for an exciting experience. And to Tim's point, if you've been out there and you've been, applying these things or learning these things or finding problems, come out of the audience, talk to us, and then to have you be able to share your experiences on stage. We're always looking for new speakers that are doing new things, and that that's what's exciting. Quite honestly, things are changing in such a way that I feel like every year there's something new. But if you go back to the old, like you guys started, it's very, if you want to start a lab, for example, Chris Sistrunk did that lab presentation. It's one of the best presentations of where do you begin? How do you put together a control system security lab? What tools? You go back, there's probably some things now that you could do a little bit better, but it's still a great foundation. So I encourage people in the audience who are interested to not only to look at this year's stuff, but to go back and, if you will, scroll down the website, you can still find really lots of great information that was shared in the past.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's core to go back and do that, right? To actually look at what's already been shared. Realize the shoulders of the giants that you're standing on, and then come and push the community forward. But don't feel like you need to have some cutting edge research. That's not what this conference is about. Yeah, we have that, but the conference is about sharing your insights and lessons learned and what works out in the field. And there's always a place for that. So Tim, one of the most exciting things I think that's happened at to the SANS ICS curriculum in general, but especially with the summit in the past year or two, has really been Netwars. We get to talk about presentations of what's working. We get to work and interact together, but ICS Netwars kind of ties it all together, where as just a component of being at the summit, you also get to take sort of a hands-on approach that's approachable from someone who doesn't do any of security, and like challenge level 1, like those challenges in level 1 are very, very approachable. You didn't even get like the answers by clicking, hint enough times, up to level 2 and 3, where you're actually really, really digging into the data and really getting to interact with control systems and really testing out those skills. And on top of it all, we get to eat cookies. So Tim, walk me through ICS Netwars, what people can expect at this summit and going forward with Netwars, and then also what other type of Netwars we're cooking up in terms of ICS.
Sure thing. Yeah, so Netwars has been a major focus for us, just as we talked about people being able to come to a summit and hear a variety of different topics that are interesting to them that they can go back and do something about, attend classes, and sit through kind of their 5-6 days of a very focused topic for their roles and their responsibilities to expand their capability when they return. But in a lot of ways, we're seeing a need for more kind of collaborative or team-based training, and looking at Netwars and looking at what the other curriculums that SANS have done over the years. That seemed like something that we had to crack the code on and figure out how to do within industrial control system space. Some of our challenges were all the different people that play a role in that space, and everybody doesn't learn the same. So you've got some people with kind of an IT, OT background. You've got some people that are more engineering focused. You got some others that maybe this is all new to them. So along the same lines that you walked through, where we have 4 different levels, kind of introducing people in at in kind of an entry level where they can research, they can go find, they can get answers to their the questions and continue to progress through the game. And we've also built it in with hint systems so they can get help along the way. We reduce the specificity of the hints, I guess, the higher up you get. So it gets a little bit harder and a little bit more challenging. Ultimately, we have 2 variants now. ICS Netwars, the cookie version, which is definitely our personal favorite, just because while we're watching people do work.
How can you complain about eating cookies all night? Like, we get to eat cookies in Disney World. The summit is amazing. Okay.
Yes, exactly. It is all blue team focused. You're trying to defend the cookies as what's shown on the slide here, with a whole bunch of different series of industrial control system elements in the front, plus some actual physical components where we're cooking cookies and controlling them with the controllers, and we got some mixers and some refrigeration units and a whole bunch of other things going on. But as we've ran that a number of times, we know there's people who come to this conference, the summit, religiously, so we're trying to provide some alternatives as well. Overseas, we've gone through and had an opportunity to run a grid Netwars, which was again no more specific to the electric sector than the cookie Netwars was to people who are in food manufacturing. It's available to any and all. Definitely kind of refining and honing your skill sets at every step of the way. However, the grid Netwars that we'll be running this year is a split Level 1 and level 2 is blue team, and level 3 and level 4 is more of a identifying methods and approaches to getting into a utility, still 100% from a learning perspective focused on the defenders. So no different than when we returned from Ukraine and all the great defense use cases that we've written, talking about what adversary actions occurred, and is all written from the perspective of what do you need to learn as a defender so you can go and reduce the impact of a successful attack or improve your ability to recover. Same focus here for Grid Netwars. Main goals, definitely levels 1 and level 2, you are trying to defend a fictitious power utility, and level 3 and level 4, you're part of a mission team that's trying to cause some circuit breaker operations in the field. So a series of physical elements in the front of the room and some operator HMIs and engineering workstations to kind of provide an environment. If you were to read our Ukraine 2015, 2016 defense use case, it's an environment for you to go practice it. So that's what we're bringing this year.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's just such a fun evening when we get to actually do Netwars and play around it. To your point, I don't care if you call it red team or blue team. It is entirely around defending and learning how to do things. The only offensive folks are the jerks trying to break into our infrastructure. So it's nice just to be able to work together and actually get to do some fun things. So Mike, on this last slide, I'm going to introduce the slide while I'm turning it back over to you. So this is our closing slide on what to expect. And up here, you know, I left them with, look, your leading talks on ICS cybersecurity are happening here, especially from what's actually going on in the field. You got games and events where we're going out and hanging out together, and we're also doing game nights and at night talks and everything else as well. You're making friends for life. As I look back at the pictures across the slides and even like the Netwars one, I can pick out all the faces of the people that were in my class, people that I learned at the summit in general, people that I still stay in touch with to this day, either through the forum that we have or just in general life. We got the education and training aspect of it. And then, of course, topping it all off, it's in Disney World. I do not care how bad of a time you think you're going to have. It's going to be an amazing time. And it's in Disney World, so you can't complain. And if you're one of those people that are like, oh, I hate Disney World, like, don't come to our summit. No, anyways, so Disney World is amazing, and it's a great place to be and have this and focus on control systems, which I think there's a lot of downside. Like, there's a lot of hype at times in our industry, and there's a lot of like, woe is me. And I always come away from the ICS Summit feeling rejuvenated and ready to go and tackle these problems and realizing that defense is in fact doable. So Mike, we'll close us out on sort of the not only what to expect, but general guiding thoughts on the summit and what to expect in years to come.
Yeah, that sounds great. It is a fun time, obviously, and we talked about this community. The focus is the practice of ICS security. We're going to give you the why from incidents and threats, the realm of the possible out there as it relates to the technologies that we're deploying and how they can be defeated, what's happening in the space of regulation. We're going to focus on the how, implementing, doing, planning. We're going to talk about the what, which is the technologies, the supplier practices, roadmaps that are out there, models, how these models need to change. That's the experience we're going to impart, and bring good ideas. Because I tell you what, to emphasize this community concept, out of the summit, we have as a community taken on lots of things. It was the first discussion way back in the very early summits. We developed procurement standards. We came out with procurement guidelines. It was a cooperative approach, and then DHS and DOE furthered those projects. We built a certification regime for practitioners, and people said, hey, we need to, in our ecosystem, know that people could come into our environments and do this work. We built a certification regime out of that as a community. We turned around and built all sorts of practices and practice documents. So the idea is, where you're struggling, bring those ideas, have a good community networking get together. We're all going to learn things to go home and do the next day. And as a community, we have launched many initiatives that I think has absolutely improved the state of ICS security.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I think if you're just coming in the community and you look around, you're going, okay, this is the status of the community. That's fine. All right, cool. This is what it is. But if you look back and you go trace back the origins, a significant portion of the global ICS security community can trace its roots to SANS and what it's done over the years. I look at a lot of what happens now, like you said, the procurement standards. Oh, well, where do these procurement standards come from? Oh, well, actually, all the practitioners talking about the challenges on a regular basis at the conference, and it spawned out of there. I looked at my own journey and like the company that we're doing now. Well, why do you take that approach to security? Because for years, this was what we were all talking about was being needed, and this is what we were teaching, and that's what we were doing. Okay, well, what do our classes come from? From the years of challenges of, oh yeah, we don't really know how to monitor and respond to attacks in our environments. Okay, well, here's how you do it. So what I think I love on that piece is, and to your point, is just about everything we do from Netwars to the paths outside of SANS that people take are rooted in understanding the problem and going and trying to address it, which, not to throw darts at the enterprise security community, because a lot of cool stuff happens there too, but a lot of other like InfoSec and enterprise security conferences are more, hey, I found this cool thing in research. Do you know a problem where it fits? And ours is very much, we know the problems, we're going to develop answers out of that. And that's just something really, really powerful. Tim, what do you got as we start closing this down as well?
All right, it'll be quick. So I'm thinking pre-conference, thinking of a state where none of these summits existed, none of the things that you talked about with S4, with ICS Summit, with kind of in any of it. If none of it existed, we had, in those days, a lot of engineers, a lot of technologists, a lot of technologists, a lot of innovators look into problems with process, looking at problems with operations, and they all do their jobs. They fix problems. This summit has highlighted the problem of ICS security and kind of focused on the things that need all these brilliant people, the same engineers, same technologists, and same innovators, to shift what they're focusing on and go and fix problems in ICS cybersecurity so that our critical infrastructure can be safe, reliable, affordable, and here for all of us and our kids. It's a reason why it's a community of who it is. A whole bunch of mission-focused people that they're all out doing great work every day. It's our job to keep making sure that we train them every year the best we can.
That's a good way to start closing it out. So look, I think to everybody out there that's listening to it now, as well as just in the future, as you're considering an event, like I said at the beginning, obviously this one, the next one is the 2019 summit, but this is a webcast that we're going to keep on the site to be able to use for anybody that's interested in coming. That the general idea is, come take advantage of the community, come learn from the community, come contribute to the community, and understand that this is one of those truly unique opportunities to not just talk about research, although it happens, but to really get involved in something bigger than yourself, which I think is appropriate for the mission that we have around us for our industrial security. I always like to tell people that ask me about, well, what's the difference in industrial? Well, when you talk about your bank, you talk about your bank. When you talk about our electric infrastructure, or our gas pipelines, or our manufacturing capability as a country, we talk about our infrastructure. It's a difference of perspectives and even the way that we talk about it. It's our community, and we hope that you come and contribute to it as well, because we're waiting and we're excited to have you. So with that, Carol, I'm going to turn it over to you to go ahead and close it down. And thank you everybody for attending, and looking forward to seeing you not only in 2019, but beyond.
All right, thank you so much, Robert, Tim, and Michael, for your great presentation, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.